In a glittering ballroom where everyone sought wealth and status, one girl sat alone, unnoticed, forgotten. But when a billionaire with sharp eyes crossed the floor and whispered, "Dance with me tonight," everything changed. This is the story of Ruby and Thomas, a love that defied judgment, broke barriers, and proved that true worth lies not in riches, but in the heart. Ruby sat quietly in the farthest corner of the grand reception hall, her back nearly pressed against the cool wall, as if she wished to disappear into it. The chandeliers above dripped golden light like 1,000 captured stars, but none of that glow seemed to touch her. Everywhere she looked, the world shimmered. Men in tuxedos with polished shoes, women in gowns that looked like flowing rivers of silk. Waiters moved gracefully, carrying trays of sparkling champagne, and laughter burst like music from the mouths of the confident and privileged. But Ruby sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her breathing shallow, her presence nearly swallowed by the extravagance around her. She had done her part earlier in the evening, checking last-minute details for the event as part of the organizing team. When her duties ended, she had been given permission to sit and enjoy the evening, but enjoyment wasn't so simple for her. Her dress was neat but plain, stitched with care but not dripping with wealth. Her shoes were polished but worn, carrying stories of years where she had walked more than she had danced. Ruby's beauty was gentle, natural, unpainted by expensive makeup or jewels. No one turned their head when she walked in. No one offered her a smile, not even the shallow kind of smile people pass around at parties. She could feel the invisible glass wall that separated her world from theirs. It wasn't just money. It was the way they carried themselves, as though the earth itself bent to their importance. Ruby carried herself differently, humbly, quietly, as though afraid to claim space that wasn't hers. The music swelled, a romantic waltz. Couples flowed to the center, their movements smooth and perfect, as if they had been rehearsing their entire lives for this very night. Ruby's eyes followed them, and with each spin, each elegant twirl, she felt her heart tighten. She wasn't jealous. No, she didn't carry jealousy. But she did carry a weight, the weight of never being chosen. She remembered school dances where she sat on the bleachers, waiting for someone, anyone, to extend a hand. She remembered birthdays spent alone, watching others laugh in circles she was never invited into. Now, at 25, she told herself she had grown strong, that loneliness was her quiet friend. But tonight, in this golden hall of joy and laughter, that old ache returned, sharp as ever. Her reflection in the glass of a nearby window startled her. She studied her face, soft brown eyes, lips pressed tight, hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She whispered to her own reflection, "You are not ugly. You are not invisible. So why does no one see you?" Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress. The fabric wasn't silk, it wasn't shimmering. It was simple cotton, ironed neatly. Ruby thought about leaving, about slipping away unnoticed the same way she had slipped in. But something in her heart begged her to stay just a little longer. Maybe, just maybe, someone would look her way. The laughter of the crowd grew louder, a reminder of her silence. The music lifted higher, a reminder of her stillness. And as couples danced and spun under the chandeliers, Ruby sat frozen in her chair, her lips trembling. She leaned closer to herself, whispering words that no one else would ever hear. "No one will ever ask me to dance." Her heart sank as the words echoed inside her, a truth she had believed her whole life. The world moved on without her, too fast, too bright, too loud. Yet little did she know. In just a few breaths, the sharp eyes of a man who commanded empires would notice the quiet girl no one else had. And from that moment, her life would never be the same. Thomas Whitmore stood tall on the other side of the glittering hall, a figure that demanded attention without a single word. At 35, he carried the kind of presence that came not just from wealth, but from power earned through sharp decisions and a will that never bent. Broad shoulders filled his tailored black suit, every detail perfect, from the cufflinks at his wrists to the shine of his shoes. Yet it wasn't his clothing or money that silenced people when he entered. It was his eyes. His sharp eyes cut through masks, through false smiles, through the shallow games played by the wealthy. When he looked at someone, they felt exposed, as though he saw the truth behind their words. Businessmen feared those eyes. Rivals respected them. Women tried to catch them, but very few ever did. Tonight, like every other event, people gravitated toward him. Men clapped him on the shoulder, laughing too loudly to win favor. Women brushed past him with practiced grace, hoping for a second of his attention. He nodded politely, but his mind was elsewhere. For the first time in years, Thomas felt bored. The polished laughter, the forced charm, the endless pretending, it was all the same. What was the point of building empires if every room he entered felt so empty? His soul, though surrounded by wealth, was starved for something real. And then he saw her. Across the shining floor, tucked away near the edge of the hall, sat a girl no one else seemed to notice. Her head was slightly bowed, her hands folded nervously in her lap, as if she were trying to disappear. Her dress wasn't glittering, but it framed her with a quiet beauty that no diamond could outshine. She wasn't laughing, wasn't speaking, wasn't pretending. She was just there, still, honest, real. Thomas's sharp eyes locked onto her, and in that moment, the world around him blurred. The chandeliers, the music, the voices, all faded until there was only her. A strange pull tugged at his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. She wasn't trying to shine, yet she did. She wasn't demanding attention, yet his eyes refused to leave her. Something about the way she sat alone, so self-contained, so quietly strong, pierced through the steel walls he had built around his heart. Why is she alone? He wondered, his thoughts sharper than the music swirling around him. Doesn't she know she deserves the world? For years, he had been surrounded by people who wanted his money, his name, his power. But this girl, she wanted nothing. Her loneliness wasn't a performance, it was real. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. The more Thomas studied her, the more he felt a strange certainty. This night would not pass like the others. He wasn't just curious, he was compelled. Something inside him whispered that if he let this girl remain unnoticed, he would regret it forever. His jaw tightened, his breath deepened. The man who controlled boardrooms, who bent markets to his will, suddenly felt powerless against the pull of a girl sitting quietly at the edge of the hall. For the first time in a long time, Thomas Whitmore wasn't thinking like a billionaire. He was thinking like a man, and in his sharp eyes, Ruby was no longer invisible. She was the only one who existed. Thomas moved through the crowd with a calm power that made people step aside without even realizing it. Hands reached out to greet him, voices called his name, but he brushed past them as though they didn't exist. Every shallow compliment, every forced smile, they slid off him like meaningless echoes. His eyes were fixed on only one destination. Ruby felt the shift before she even saw him. The air seemed heavier, the laughter around her blurred, and a strange awareness crawled up her spine. Then she looked up and froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The Thomas Whitmore, the billionaire whose presence dominated the room, was standing directly before her table. For a heartbeat, she thought it was a mistake. Perhaps he was looking for someone else. But no, his sharp eyes were locked on her, steady and unshakable. Ruby's hands tightened in her lap, her heart hammering so loudly she feared he could hear it. Why was he here? Why her? She was nobody in this glittering sea of important people. Thomas leaned closer, his tall frame casting a protective shadow over her. His voice was calm, deep, and steady, but it carried a weight that sent shivers through her. "Dance with me tonight," he whispered. Ruby's lips parted in shock. Her chest rose and fell as if she had forgotten how to breathe. "Me?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "But there are so many others." He interrupted softly, his tone unwavering, his sharp eyes holding hers captive. "I didn't come here for them, I came here for you." Time stopped. The orchestra swelled, violins rising as though the music itself understood what was happening. The crowd continued moving, laughing, dancing. But for Ruby, the world had narrowed to one man, one moment, one invitation. Her heart whispered to run. This couldn't be real. Her mind screamed that this was impossible. Men like him didn't notice girls like her. And yet, her soul leaned toward him, recognizing something deeper than reason. Thomas extended his hand. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a promise, an opening to a world she had never dreamed could be hers. His fingers waited patiently, strong and steady, ready to lift her from the shadows of loneliness. Ruby stared at that hand, her own trembling with hesitation. If she refused, the night would end as every other had, forgotten, invisible. If she accepted, her life might never be the same. The pull was too strong to resist. Slowly, almost disbelieving, she placed her delicate hand into his. The warmth of his touch shot through her like fire, melting every wall she had built to protect herself. Their eyes locked, and the world seemed to pause. The chandeliers gleamed brighter, the music soared higher, but all Ruby felt was the strength of his hand around hers. Her lips curved into the faintest, most vulnerable smile she had ever given. In that moment, she wasn't the girl nobody noticed. She was the girl chosen by the man everyone wanted, but who wanted only her. And with that single whisper, her world began to change forever. As Thomas led Ruby onto the dance floor, a ripple of whispers spread through the hall like wind brushing over still water. Every eye turned, curious, surprised, some even disapproving. The billionaire, the man everyone expected to choose the most dazzling beauty in the room, had chosen the quiet girl from the shadows. Ruby felt the weight of those stares pressing against her back. Her stomach tightened, her breath caught, and for a split second she wanted to run. But then she felt it, the firm, steady pressure of Thomas's hand resting against her waist. It wasn't demanding, it was grounding, reassuring. He guided her forward with surprising gentleness, his strength hidden beneath controlled movements. Ruby's heart raced as his sharp eyes held hers, refusing to let her drift away in fear. "You don't have to be afraid," Thomas murmured, his voice low enough for her ears alone. Ruby's throat tightened. "I'm not used to this," she admitted, her voice trembling like a fragile note in the vast symphony around them. His lips curved in the faintest smile, filled with quiet certainty. "Then let me make tonight unforgettable." The orchestra swelled, violins crying with passion, and they began to move. His steps were strong, practiced, each one pulling her deeper into a rhythm that wasn't just music, it was connection. At first her feet stumbled, nerves shaking her balance. But Thomas tightened his hold just slightly, his fingers sending strength into her trembling frame. "Breathe with me," he whispered. So she did, and slowly her body began to follow the rhythm, her movements aligning with his. The crowd watched in hushed fascination. Some eyes were curious, others critical, but Ruby no longer noticed. Her world had shrunk to the steady beat of his heart so close to her own, to the warmth of his hand on her waist, to the intensity of his gaze that made the grand hall fade into nothing. With every spin, her fear unraveled. With every step, her self-doubt loosened its grip. Her dress swirled around her ankles, catching the glow of the chandeliers, and for the first time in her life, she felt as though she belonged on the center stage. Thomas guided her effortlessly, not just leading her in dance, but leading her into belief that she was worthy of being seen. His eyes never left hers, as though he wanted her to feel that in this moment, nothing else mattered. Not the whispers, not the wealth, not the judgment. "Look at me," he said softly. Her eyes lifted, hesitating, but when they met his, her fear melted into something else, something dangerous, something thrilling. Every heartbeat echoed with the truth. She was no longer invisible. She was the woman a billionaire had chosen, not because of her dress, her status, or her charm, but because of something deeper, something real. As they moved, Ruby realized this wasn't a dance of money or power. It was a dance of two worlds colliding, his world of wealth and her world of quiet strength. And in the space between their hands, in the fire of their gazes, they were creating a new world that belonged only to them. By the end of the song, her chest ached not with loneliness, but with something she had never dared to feel before: hope. For the first time in her life, Ruby wasn't hiding in the shadows. She wasn't sitting alone, wishing. She was in his arms, seen, cherished, alive. And as the final note lingered in the air, she whispered to herself with trembling wonder, "I am not invisible anymore." The music still lingered in the hall, but Thomas didn't stop at the edge of the dance floor. With her hand still in his, he guided Ruby through the open doors into the garden beyond. Golden lanterns hung like fireflies above, swaying gently in the night breeze. The world outside was softer, quieter, free of judgmental eyes and heavy whispers. The cool air kissed Ruby's cheeks, calming her racing heartbeat. The fragrance of roses, jasmine, and night-blooming flowers wrapped around them, soothing yet intoxicating. She felt as though she had stepped into another world, one that belonged only to the two of them. For a while they walked in silence. Every step crunched against the gravel path, every moment stretched longer than it should. Ruby's mind spun, questions pressing against her lips, yet she feared breaking the fragile magic of the moment. Finally, her voice broke through the stillness. "Why me?" she asked, her words trembling, carrying the weight of her self-doubt. Her eyes lowered to the ground, as though she couldn't bear to look at him when asking something so raw. Thomas stopped walking. Slowly, he turned toward her. For a moment, he didn't speak. His sharp eyes studied her face, the way her lashes trembled, the vulnerability hiding in her lowered gaze. And then something shifted, those piercing eyes softened. "Because," he said gently, his voice low but firm, "you remind me of who I used to be, hungry for love, but ignored by the world." His words sank into her like sunlight into cold soil. "You carry pain in your silence, Ruby, but also courage. And that is more beautiful than anything money can buy." Her lips parted, but no words came. Tears welled up, blurring the golden lanterns above into shimmering stars. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had looked beyond her quietness, beyond her plain dress, beyond the surface, into her heart. Her voice broke again, soft and fragile. "And what if people laugh at you for choosing me?" The question hung in the cool night air, heavy and fearful. Thomas stepped closer, his tall frame towering yet protective. With gentle fingers, he lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. In his eyes, she saw no hesitation, no shame, only truth. "Let them laugh," he said firmly, his tone unshakable. "Money buys attention, Ruby, but it can't buy peace. And peace is what I feel when I'm with you." His words carved themselves into her heart. "You are what I've been searching for all along." Ruby's breath hitched, her chest tightening with emotion. Her tears finally slipped free, tracing down her cheeks like fragile rivers. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the whole garden might hear it. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. Believed that maybe she was worthy of being loved. Not for her beauty, not for her status, not for what she could give, but simply for who she was. Thomas reached for her hand again, holding it gently, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a silent vow. And Ruby, trembling but no longer afraid, let herself lean into the safety of his presence. Under the golden lanterns, among the whispers of flowers and stars, something fragile but powerful bloomed between them. Something neither of them could deny anymore. As the night ended, Thomas walked Ruby back inside, holding her hand tightly for all to see. Eyes followed them. Whispers rippled through the ballroom like waves across a restless sea. Some frowned in disbelief, others smirked as though mocking, and a few even scoffed outright. But neither Thomas nor Ruby cared. Their steps were steady, their hands bound together as one. Ruby, once the lonely girl hidden in shadows, now walked in the glow of chandeliers. She was no longer invisible, no longer the girl people passed by without notice. She was the woman who had caught the heart of a billionaire, and tonight, the world saw it. Thomas, the man who had everything, found what money could never purchase: genuine love. He had built empires, commanded respect, and silenced boardrooms with a glance. Yet here he was, his strength not in his wealth, but in the tenderness of his grip on Ruby's hand. Every step forward was a declaration. She mattered, she belonged, she was seen. And for Ruby, the weight of loneliness she had carried for years began to melt away. Their story became more than a romance. It was a quiet revolution. It whispered a truth that so many forget. True worth is not measured by riches or beauty, but by the soul within. Society, blind with judgment, often crowns the loudest voices, but overlooks the quiet hearts. Ruby had been that quiet heart. She had been dismissed, ignored, passed over as though she were invisible. But Thomas had looked deeper. He had seen her courage hidden beneath silence. He had seen her strength carried inside a fragile frame. As they stood together, society's mask slipped. Some guests looked away in shame, realizing their cruelty. Others, bound by envy, could not understand how a billionaire chose humility over glamour. But a few, just a few, saw hope. Hope that love was not dead in a world ruled by wealth. Ruby's chest tightened with emotion, tears glimmering in her eyes. She whispered almost to herself, "I still don't understand why you chose me." Thomas turned to her, his sharp eyes now softened by something purer than desire. "Because you were never invisible to me," he said. Those words broke the last chain around her heart. For so long she had believed love wasn't meant for her. Now, under the golden lights, she realized love had been searching for her all along. The kind of love that didn't need diamonds or fame, but simply needed truth. The ballroom watched as Thomas leaned closer, brushing his lips near her ear. "Ruby," he whispered, his voice steady and sure, "from this moment you'll never sit alone again." Her knees nearly buckled, but his arms held her steady, anchoring her to him. And she believed him, not because of his power, not because of his name. She believed him because she had felt his heart, unguarded and real. Because in his arms she had found something she never thought possible: home. A place where she was wanted, a place where she was enough. Together they had silenced the room, not with money, not with grandeur, but with something far stronger: love that crossed boundaries. Love that stood proudly in the face of judgment and refused to bow. Their story lingered long after the music faded. It became a reminder whispered from one heart to another, that sometimes the most powerful choice a man can make is to notice the one everyone else overlooks. And in that choice, society was forced to learn a lesson. Real love does not ask permission. It does not bow to wealth, status, or the shallow opinions of the crowd. Real love breaks barriers, and when it arrives, it changes everything.